fellow bookworms, Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and we just finished reading Stephen King's Carrie. So, this was our very first weekly read, and I'm really glad I decided to choose this book for our weekly read. I was kind of hesitant because I do not like Stephen King. I kind of talked about that previously when I introduced the book of the month and then our weekly reads. And he jumps around too much, and even this one, he kept cutting away from the main narrative and then going back, and it throws me off because I have such a hard time keeping like characters straight that when they jump away like that, like it just throws me off. But I think because I was so familiar with this one, even though I never read the book, and I've seen the movies but I don't remember them clearly, I think just being so familiar with the story really helped me, when I was reading this. And I did enjoy, like, he is a very good author. It's just I have a hard time following him. So I did really enjoy this, and we're going to talk more about this book in just a second. But before we do, I just want to um, remind you that we are going to be reading this Dean Koontz book, Demon Seed, for our next weekly read, which is starting today, August 18th through August 25th. And I chose this one because this is the other author that kind of ties into my sister, and I have so many of his books that I really want to read them. I've only read like a couple of them, and so I really want to read what I have, and that way I can decide if I'm going to keep these books or not. I have a really hard time getting rid of books, but I do need to kind of weed out my library and decide the authors and the books that I'm going to keep, or at least enjoyed. Even if I don't think I'm going to reread them, if I enjoyed them, I want to keep that book because I might reread it in the future. Or if it's an author that I truly don't enjoy, or a book I truly didn't enjoy, I want to send that on so somebody else can definitely have it. But this is the next weekly read, like I said, starting today, August 18th through the 25th. And then just to give you time, I'm trying to kind of get ahead, and that way if you want to participate, you guys have time to pick up the books. But for our next weekly read, which is 25th through September 1st, we are going to be reading Anne McCaffrey's Freedom's Ransom. And this does not tie to my sister, but it does tie to my childhood. The author does, not this book itself. This is actually my husband's book. But I do have like the Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey, those books. And so I decided, this was kind of a shorter book, and I decided I wanted to go ahead and read it for our next weekly read. So pick this one up, and definitely, pick up Demon Seed if you haven't already, and that way you can participate as well. And I will leave where you can pick these up in the description below, along with some more links in case you have read Carrie and you would like to. Those will be linked in the description below as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into my thoughts on Carrie. And like I said, I did enjoy the book. Like, I enjoyed the story that he created. Like, there's obviously nobody can dispute that Stephen King is a really good author. Like I said, the struggle I have with reading him is that he jumps around. He, like in this book, he did kind of jump between characters, but he also had like little cut scenes where he had like excerpts from like books that were written about Carrie, obviously in the storyline, and things like that, or the book that Sue Snell wrote and things like that. And so those little cutscenes make it really hard for me to keep track of the story and the characters, because it's mainly the characters I struggle with keeping track of. And I do the same thing in TV shows and movies and everything. And so I have a really hard time with that. I don't know how much of it ties to me being autistic and how much is it's just a me thing. But I have always struggled with that. And like I said, I can watch the same movies over and over and over again because and like even a movie I'm familiar with, talking about the characters, I have a really hard time with. So but that's, I think, what my main struggle is with Stephen King. I think because I was so familiar with this story from the movies and just people talking about it in general, it really helped me kind of keep track. And excuse that noise if you can hear it, the puppy's playing with her bone outside the room. So but yeah, I think it was a really good book. And if you do struggle with Stephen King, like I do, I think this is a good one for you to read because, like I said, you should be familiar with the story. And I am going to talk a little bit about some key points in the story that kind of caught my attention. So I do just want to add kind of a spoiler alert. Like I said, at this point, uh, you should be familiar with Carrie, but just in case you're not, just be warned. You know, there's I'm going to be talking about some specific scenes and things like that. Some key points that really kind of made me think. So the first one I want to talk about is Stephen King does kind of like an introduction in this book and kind of describes his life as a little struggling artist and talks about how he started writing Carrie, and then he also talks about his inspiration for Carrie and two different girls that he went to school with. And that kind of got me thinking because it kind of made me sad. He, mentioned that he didn't necessarily participate in the bullying, but he never said anything either. And that really struck a chord because I have a really hard time like stepping up and saying anything. And I think a lot of us do. We don't want that directed onto us if we do stand up for somebody and say something. But at the same time, it's so important, to say something. And I remember when I went to school, there was a kid in elementary school that I went to school with, and his parents had different religious views than everybody else. I don't remember what religion exactly, but he wasn't allowed, I think maybe Jewish, but again, I can't remember for sure. But he wasn't allowed to participate in the Halloween activities, um, in Christmas activities, and they even didn't let him participate like in Valentine's Day or anything like that. And then on top of that, he had really bad dandruff, and so the kids were always harassing him about that. And then he also smelled a little bit too, so people would kind of harass him about that a little bit as well. And like I said, I never really bullied him, but he actually bullied me one time. And I remember he made me cry, and I was telling my sisters, and they got really upset. And we were like, oh, we're gonna have a talk with that kid. And it's like, no, don't worry about it. Um, so, but yeah, he got picked on a lot, which wasn't really fair because it was, things that he couldn't really control. I mean, maybe the body odor, yeah, but dandruff, he couldn't really control that. And, his parents' religious views and not letting him participate, he had no control over that either. So it kind of really struck a chord with me when he was talking about that. And I think we can all, think back to our childhood and maybe instance where we, were turned off by somebody and didn't necessarily maybe bully them, but also didn't stand up for them either. I think we all can maybe relate to that somewhat for sure. So, and maybe you bullied somebody because you just, didn't like something about them. Either way, I think it's kind of an important message. That's not okay. Like one, bullying's not okay at all, and then two, definitely, you should stand up and you should say something when you see somebody being bullied for sure. So I want to jump right into the story and that first scene where Carrie does get her very first period and her menstruation, and they all gang up on her. Um, that scene was just so horrific. I mean, even just reading it, and I'm sure, like I said, I've seen the movies, but I don't really remember them. And I'm sure that scene really packed a punch there too. But that was just, I think even today, like that can be a traumatic thing for girls when you get your first menstruation. And I think we still see like sometimes they get bullied, especially I don't think girls so much anymore. I mean, I could be mistaken. I'm not in school anymore. But I think, boys still kind of will bully girls too, or at least that's it's portrayed, in media and such. And it shouldn't be that way. Like it's a normal part of life. And I think girls definitely should be more understanding. And the fact that these girls weren't, I mean, yes, Carrie was older and she should have had had gone through that before, but she hadn't. And even if she had, like, how they acted, if she just didn't realize what was happening, how they acted was not okay at all. And so that was really, like I said, that scene packed a punch for sure. And even the teacher was kind of disgusted, and then when she realized what was happening, then that compassion came in. But I mean, I think that compassion should have been there from the start. Which is another thing. It was interesting reading this because obviously it's an older book. I think he wrote it in 79. And the book itself, like some of the things, like there's no way teachers would ever get, like, the assistant principal has an ashtray and smokes in school, and I'm like, there's just no way today. But that was the times. So it just kind of like it, reading an older story, and you're like, that would never happen today at all. But it kind of struck me, as some of the ways the teachers acted too kind of struck me, because it's like that wouldn't happen today for sure. But and then I want to talk about some of the different people themselves. And first is Carrie. Obviously she's the main character. And I think initially reading it, like, she's kind of portrayed as dumb. Um, and then as you go forward, you see that she really isn't dumb at all. I think really she was just kind of shut down. Like, she was just completely shut down. And so she kind of had to work on standing up for herself and coming out of her shell a little bit. And then Sue Snell, she I don't know what to think about her character. I think her character was very human and real, because I think all of us, like, even if we try to strive to be kind, like I said, we still sometimes we're turned off by certain people, and sometimes we get caught up with other people and the peer pressure and such. And even at the end, she goes and she finds Carrie, and she still kind of feels that disgust for her. Even while she is feeling, that compassion and wanting to help her, there's still that certain level of, like, I just don't like you, like, you're odd. And I don't know, I think that's relatable, because you're not gonna like everybody. Some people are gonna rub you the wrong way, you're gonna be put off by some people. And so that's really relatable, but at the same time, it just shows, like, even when you have those feelings, like, you still need to treat them with kindness and compassion. Um, you don't have to like everybody, but that doesn't give you a right to be mean. And then you have Chris Hargensen, and she was like the classic little rich girl, very entitled, never had consequences for any of her actions. Daddy would save her every time. And I had a strong dislike for her character, but even then, I still had empathy for her character as well. Just the way Billy Nolan treated her, like, he treated her like trash. And I don't care, how bad of a person somebody is, they still don't deserve that. And so that was another, like, I did not like her, but at the same time, like, I did have some empathy for her with the way, Billy treated her for sure. Which brings us on to Billy Nolan, and he was like the psychopath. And I think if he hadn't been in the picture, um, I still think Chris would have done something. She would have acted out in some way, but I don't think it would have been as, like, dramatic. It would have been more like, what is that movie? Is it Never Been Kissed? And the dog food scene. I don't know if you've seen that, but basically same thing. They're at a dance, and the popular guy asks the nerdy girl to dance, and then the friends are gonna dump dog food on her. Um, Kind of the same concept there, and something more mild like that. But I mean, pig's blood, and I mean, then the heavy bucket falling down, like, it was taken up a notch for sure. I think she would have still done something and acted out in some way, but I don't think it would have been as like hardcore as it was if she hadn't been involved with Billy. I mean, because she's definitely not gonna go slit, a pig's throat to get the blood or anything like that for sure. So, I think she would have done something, but not to the degree that he took it up. And just, I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings about him. I mean, I don't have mixed feelings, but I'm kind of confused by his character because in the beginning, it kind of talks that he loves her and he would do anything for Chris, but then in the end, it's he hates her and he's done with her, and it's like, well, which one is it? Like, you're so in love that you would do anything, or you just, you're just a douchebag and you hate her and you don't want anything to do with her. I don't know, but it kind of twisted and I was confused because, I think the whole love aspect and being crazy in love, like I don't agree with it, but that makes him a little bit more relatable. But just, he wanted to do it. He thought it was funny and he enjoyed, torturing. And he even said it didn't matter if it was Carrie or not. Like, he would have dumped the blood on anybody that was sitting in that chair. Like, it was about doing it for him. And then, he kind of has like this hatred, and it's just, he's toxic for sure. For sure. Classic toxic, red flags everywhere. So get out of there. And then we have Tommy Ross. And, they kind of talked, or he, dumb jock stereotype, but he's not dumb at all. And he had a kindness to him. Like, I mean, I'm sure he never kind of stood up for Carrie in the past. He never really looked at her. But when he decides, yeah, I'll go ahead and take her, at Sue's insistence, obviously, he's kind about it. Like, there's a kindness to him. And I think his death was along with Carrie's, I would say, was probably one of the more heartbreaking ones for sure. Um, that one was hard. I mean, it was quick and everything, but it was hard. And I knew it was coming, obviously, because he kind of talks about that, like, he would only have this long to live. But I was hoping he didn't die, like, in the inferno, like what Carrie causes, like the mass destruction that Carrie causes. I hope he was one that didn't die, and he didn't. It was caused because of Billy, and the bucket and knocking him, Billy and Chris, and knocking him in the head. And so that one was hard. And then, of course, we have her mother, Margaret White. And it's kind of the classic case of nature versus nurture. And at the end, there's a letter, and it's, another child that's showing abilities. But to me, I think a lot of it had to do with how Carrie was treated. Because it's kind of talking about, like, do we test for this? And, eugenics and all that. It kind of discusses a little bit for the TK gene, but I think it comes down, one, her mother wasn't mentally stable at all. Like, her mother was crazed, not just a religious fanatic, but also crazed in the mind, which we saw that. We saw that multiple times. And with Carrie, I think, she had a little bit of that, but the way she was treated, exacerbated, however you say that word, I don't know, but it made it worse, is my point. And I think, if she had been treated with a little bit of kindness and compassion, and even if she had been bullied at school, if she had that support at home, I don't think it necessarily would have ended the way it did. But she was treated badly by her peers, and then she was treated badly by her mom. And so she had no safe place to go, and she just snapped. And I think that's completely relatable. I think, sometimes you're treated badly at home, but you have your peers or some friends that can relate. Carrie didn't have any friends. And so it was just kind of very, tragic. Like, her story is a very tragic one. And I don't see her as the bad guy of the story at all, which I think a lot of people would. Um, just because to the degree she snapped. But to me, like, she was truly a victim. Um, and so it was a tragedy. But yeah, I really did enjoy this book, and I thought the story was a very, very good story, which obviously, it's been made into movies and everything like that, and it's very classic, very well known. But like I said, I still had a kind of a hard time following it regardless because he just jumps around and cuts off too much. But I still, like I said, he's a great author, and if you can kind of keep track better in your head, definitely an author that most people, I think, enjoy for sure. And so many of his books have been made into movies, which are very enjoyable as well. So, but that's all I have for today. Just kind of my thoughts on it, and the key points and the key characters that I really think people can take something from. But let me know if you read it or if you watched the movie, kind of what your thoughts are on the overall story. But I'm really more interested in if you read it, kind of your thoughts on the book itself. And definitely leave those down in the comments below. And again, remember this week we are reading Demon Seed by Dean Koontz, and we will talk about that next week. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.